Hi everyone, I'm back for another video. I'm sorry it's been so long. I had loads and loads of requests to do a tortoise video, so I'm kind of in the middle of filming a hibernation series at the moment, but it's taking quite a lot longer than I thought it was going to. Basically, it's just such a huge topic and I really want to make sure that I'm researching all the information really thoroughly because I don't want to put out any poor information because it's such a huge topic, and if it's done wrong it can be really dangerous for tortoises, so I feel like I want to cover it really well. So that is taking quite a while. I've also had loads of requests for a cage short, which obviously I can't do at the moment because Sheldon is in hibernation. So I thought I would settle for a video on tortoise substrates. Now I did touch on this, I did a video quite a while ago now on setting up a Mediterranean tortoise enclosure, so that touched on sort of substrates, lighting, housing, but at some point I do want to go into all of these topics in more detail because I feel like they're really important and there's not actually a huge amount of really good informative videos out there. So today we're going to do the substrates. Now tortoise substrates is a confusing topic, especially because there's so much conflicting information out there. There's a lot of poor tortoise information still available, a lot of really sort of outdated information as well. So you do really need to know your stuff when it comes to substrates. I feel like it's something that's quite often overlooked and not seen as something that's as important as housing or lighting or anything like that. But the wrong substrate can actually be lethal. There are some articles on the Tortoise Trust website where sort of bedding has actually ended up in the death of a tortoise. So it is so important to find the perfect substrate for the species of tortoise that you own. Now that's another thing, is I get asked all the time, here's a picture of my tortoise, what is it? What species is it? And it's a bit concerning that people own a tortoise but they don't actually know what species it is, because tortoises can originate from all over the world. They're all from different environments, they all have different diets. There's some tropical species which live in a really humid environment and need high levels of protein, and there's the Mediterranean species which live in a relatively dry climate and they need really low levels of protein in their diet, and there's such a wide variety. So it's really important that you do know what species of tortoise you own, because otherwise I don't see how you would be caring for it properly. So again, there's a lot of organisations which will be able to identify the species of tortoise that you've got. The Tortoise Trust do say that if you send them some good quality photos, they'll be able to identify the species of tortoise that you have, or they'll try anyway. And then there's always sort of reptile specialist vets, and I do feel like that is the best place to start, is by knowing what species of tortoise that you own. So obviously you're going to need different substrates for different species. Now different substrates offer different levels of moisture. Clay type substrates will hold in more moisture than sandy substrates, so tropical tortoises would need a substrate that holds in more moisture than a Mediterranean species. And a substrate with the wrong moisture retention for the species of tortoise that you own can lead to lots of complications, shell rot, respiratory diseases, so you do need to work out what species of tortoise you own. A lot of tortoise keepers also keep their tortoises outside, and lawns and gardens are fairly moist and can lead to shell rot in sort of Mediterranean species on the plastron. So if you're housing them outside, they do need areas to graze, which can be great for species like leopard tortoises and sulcatas, but they also need drier areas so they're not constantly exposed to the damp on their plastron. So tortoises must also be able to make shallow scrapes if they choose to. Now this helps to create microclimates within their enclosure and also prevents dehydration, which can lead to bladder stones and other health issues. So tortoises not only dig down to regulate their temperature but also to regulate their fluid loss, So it is really important that you find a bedding that will allow them to do this. The Tortoise Trust, which again is my go-to place for tortoise care information, doesn't recommend using any commercial reptile beddings, which are often sold by pet shops as perfect for tortoises and turtles. So I made this mistake when I first got my tortoise. I walked into a pet shop and I said, what bedding does he need? And they sold me this kind of sandy substrate, which I later found out wasn't any good for him. So please don't go just on what pet shops say. A lot of pet shops, I'm not saying every pet shop is rubbish at all, but a lot of pet shops aren't very well informed with the information they give out. So I would double check any information. Pet shops as a rule sell a lot of different types of animals and they have a lot of different employees, and all of those people can't be experts in all of the types of animals that they sell. So here are some explanations on why the Tortoise Trust doesn't recommend using some of the most commonly sold tortoise substrates. So calci sand is a popular bedding which is sold by a lot of pet shops but is prone to clumping and can cause eye irritation. The clumping is not ideal because if a tortoise ingests this, it can cause gut impaction and as a result can sort of clog up their insides and can actually be fatal. It's also very dehydrating, so it's not recommended to use for tortoises. Also fibre-based substrates, this is again something that's commonly used but can be very dusty and dehydrating and doesn't provide the thermal advantages that we talked about earlier. And also it can become mouldy, which can lead to parasites and bacteria to thrive. So alfalfa substrates, which is one that I see used all the time, again isn't ideal. It's very dehydrating and has been associated with fungal eye and respiratory infections. It's also got a really high protein content, which is really not good for the tortoise if ingested and can lead to developmental issues such as pyramiding, especially in species that only require a low protein diet. So again, it's recommended to avoid this substrate. So cedar or pine, wood chips or shavings, again is something I see used all the time, but actually when it's heated up under the basking light, they can become flammable. They've been reported to cause fires. They're also highly toxic and emit these fumes which your tortoise will then breathe in. Again, it can cause impaction if it's ingested as well, so really don't recommend using this. Hemp bedding, again, is another one I see all the time and it's really not recommended. There's actually an article on the Tortoise Trust website where a tortoise ingested it and it actually passed away. So I'd recommend reading that. It's always worth giving it a look if you're using this bedding, just so you can make an informed decision. But like I say, it's been associated with quite severe injuries. It can be quite sharp and tortoises can embed this in their leg pits, and it doesn't have any thermal advantages or benefits that tortoises need from a substrate. So again, it's really not recommended that you use this. So bark chippings or mulch like orchid and cypress bark can be used successfully with certain species, especially tropical species, but it does need to be used with extreme care because again it provides that ideal habitat for mites and parasites to live. It's also been reported to be fatal if ingested, but this is sort of debated because a lot of people do say that they use it successfully without any issues. But so that's one to investigate further if that's something that you want to use. But before you think about using it, please check that the mix doesn't include pine or cedar because like I said earlier, they are toxic and not recommended whatsoever. So newspaper or paper towels, which I see used quite a lot. People contact me and say, can I just not use bedding? Can I just put down newspaper? No, this is really not suitable for any species of tortoise. There's no microclimates, no benefits. The tortoise can't dig to regulate their temperature or fluid loss. No, there's no benefit whatsoever for your tortoise. And again, it can be flammable if it's heated up under the basking lamp. And yeah, again, there's reports of the bedding causing fires, and it's just not worth the risk, and there's no benefit for the tortoise. So now I've basically ripped into every type of bedding, and a lot of you guys are going to be a bit annoyed with me. What do I recommend that you can use? So a suitable substrate can be made up with a mixture of topsoil, otherwise known as loam, and soft sand or children's play sand. Now this can be mixed in varying amounts depending on the natural habitat of the species of tortoise that you own. So from tortoises from a dry environment, you can use a sort of 30 to 70 ratio of soil to sand, and for humid habitats for tropical species you can use a 60-40 mix of topsoil and sand, and for Mediterranean species you can use sort of a 50-50 mix. So what I like about this substrate and why I use it personally is that it's natural, it's easy to clean, it's safe, it's non-flammable, and it's also really cheap. So in terms of cleaning, I spot clean every day, and then I just clean out the whole enclosure sort of once a month. It's so low maintenance. There is a bit of debate over the sand. There have been reports of sand irritating tortoises' eyes, so you can play around with this yourself, and some people do choose to vary the amount of sand until they find the right mixture for their tortoise. So what I would recommend doing is buying a humidity meter so you can find the right moisture content for the species of tortoise that you own. I would do research into the sort of environment that your tortoise originates from and try and recreate that as best as possible, because that's what's going to give them, that's what they're designed to live in, and then they're going to have the best chance at living a long happy life. So I buy topsoil from my local garden centre, and I buy just children's play sand from Argos, and I mix it up myself. So the substrate that you mix up needs to be at least 2 inches deep, so again they can dig to regulate their temperature and their fluid loss. You must also provide hides, which also helps this, and for the creation of microclimates as well. And this also makes their environment much more natural and stimulating. It prevents boredom, and they're going to do lots of stomping around, which helps their bones to develop properly, and it's just much more fun for them. And I also use a feeding slate, which I find really useful, because otherwise if you feed your tortoise just in a bowl and they drag it out onto the floor of their enclosure, it's going to sort of stick to the substrate and they're going to end up ingesting some. So I do put down a feeding slate, so then it falls on the slate, and it really reduces the amount of substrate that they eat, because again you don't want to cause a blockage. No matter how safe the substrate is, I imagine if they ate enough of it, it would cause some issues. So that's something that I do to further help. Yeah, I think that's about it, to be honest. So this is just the information that I've found and from the research that I've done, and the most natural substrate that I've found. If you do find that you're using one that's not recommended, I would really have a look into it and try and find some more information on it and have a look and make a decision for yourself. Obviously you've heard my opinions, and yeah, so I hope you found this video useful, and I hope it's given you a bit more information about tortoise substrates. So thank you so much for watching. I will get my hibernation series up soon, and in the meantime I have actually started an Instagram account, which I'll link in the description bar, which you guys have been nagging me about for ages, so you can keep up to date with me a bit more in between my videos as well as following me on Facebook like always. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!